What's up? Let's talk about paleo. And I think there's so many misconceptions about paleo, um, and it's extremely popular. And there's lots of different styles of paleo. It's called like primal, caveman, paleo, um, just lots of different variations of it. And so many people think that paleo and veganism are the opposite ends of the dietary spectrums. And I don't actually think that's true. And so I'm going to talk about why not. So paleo is, let's first go over like what paleo is. So it's not all about like, oh, let's just eat only meat, let's just eat all meat. And I feel like that's what it's mostly perceived as, is it's just this like meat-based diet and they don't eat anything else, and it's just, just meat. That's not actually true. There's actually about five categories of food that they encourage you to eat, like as your primary food intake, caloric intake. And those are, I believe, let me see if I can get them down, vegetables, like leafy greens, and just like all vegetables other than starches, and like tubers. Fruits, they're actually like huge advocates of fruit. So fruits and vegetables, two things very much in common with veganism. And then of course you have your additional things like meat. They do eat a lot of meat, seafood, particularly shellfish and oysters, they really like, and then other meat organs, so livers, hearts, brains, intestines. Like they really do encourage to eat every piece of the animal. And that's, I kind of applaud that. Like, they're actually, some of them who stick to like the more classic way, like, are actually trying to use and be actual hunter-gatherers. So if you were a hunter, you would pretty much utilize all the parts of an animal, and I respect that. So they do encourage those nutrient-dense sources of the animals, like the brain and like obscure things and liver and heart and stuff. So that's cool. And they even, I think, use the bones to make like broth and stuff. So those are the primary categories that paleo eaters are encouraged to like intake, which those are, fruits and vegetables are highly in common with vegans. Now, the things that paleo stays away from are also very much aligned with vegans. And so the things that paleo stay away from are processed foods. So, if you're like a whole foods vegan, like I am, like many of the vegans are today, there you go. We stay away from processed foods as much as possible. They also stay away from anything with added sugars, like processed sugars, white sugars, but they'll eat like whole food sugars, and anything else like otherwise that's processed, just any processed foods. They also stay away from starchy vegetables, so potatoes, sweet potatoes, and I think it's because of like a misconception of insulin and how those can make insulin spike in your body. But I think it's more just like misconception on that. But I'm sure they have science behind it, and that's just like a matter of debate between vegans or anyone else in paleo people. So a lot of those things actually align between the two. And let's just talk about like the health, benefits and risks of paleo. So paleo, they do eat a lot of meat, which they do put an emphasis on, like wild, caught things, or, not like hunted things, but they always promote like the grass-fed, organic, like beef and like free-range chickens and eggs and raw organic butter rather than the processed versions of that. And something else that's really interesting is that they actually do promote like eating things, like full fat milk or like full fat butter, just because it's not as processed, which I thought was really interesting. So people today who are doing paleo like aren't doing it right anyways. So on the health risks side of it, I think that if you do like classic paleo, and I guess it depends on your level of meat intake, but if you're truly doing that like all organic and in moderation, I think could be a pretty healthy diet. I mean, it's still like, you know, harming animals and stuff. So if you don't want to harm animals, then I would not suggest doing it. But if you don't really care that much about it, then, you know, I think in its classic form, you know, that whole foods form, I think it's a pretty healthy diet, as long as you're balancing, you know, the protein and the carbs you're getting from vegetables and fruit, and then, you know, your healthy fats or whole foods fats. And I don't think it's that unhealthy. So I'll just tell you about my experience on paleo. Oh, another thing that like is interesting about like classical paleo that you might not know is that they do promote like staying away from, you know, extremely high fat, even whole food sources like nuts. You know, that's a big thing on paleo, is like eating tons of nuts. But if you really go to if you really find out what paleo is all about, they're really not all about like eating a ton of nuts. So that's an interesting fact. But let's just talk about my experience on paleo. So I was challenged by a coworker about, I guess, almost 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, to go on a 30-day paleo challenge with her. And, you know, it was all the rage, like paleo was up and coming and rising, and the 30-day paleo challenge was like the thing to do. So we started this paleo thing, and, you know, my diet and exercise, whatever, was just at crazy places during this time anyways. So I was like, yeah, let's do it, you know, lose some weight, whatever. This will be easy for me. And it was not easy. It was super difficult. And that's because I'm always like super lazy with like cooking, and I don't like bake cool recipes and stuff, and I don't do like awesome things with food. So I was pretty much like starving my body for 30 days. I lived off of apples and nuts. Pretty much just fruit and nuts, which is nuts. Like, I was starving so much of the time. Like, I didn't really eat a whole lot of vegetables. I didn't eat any carbs. I mean, I just lived off of, I mean, other than fruit carbs, you know, I didn't eat any rice or potatoes or bread or pasta, anything. I didn't create dishes with meats. I ate some meat, and I guess I ate more meat than I normally was before, just because I had to get food from somewhere. But I think I used it more as like an excuse to like feed my restrictive eating disorder tendencies. So I pretty much just like lasted as far as I could through the day without eating anything, and then ate some fruit when I had to like actually function in my brain. And then I would eat some nuts to tide me over until dinner. And then for dinner I would have like a small portion of salmon or grilled chicken and any vegetables that I had on hand. And I guess I did eat a lot of salads during this time too, like for lunches and stuff, like at work, if I truly like had to have food like to function, which you do have to have food to function. So at work I would like go to Whole Foods or the grocery store or whatever and get salads, and I would just put like lettuce, and I would eat like, you know, like ranch and stuff. Not really, but because I was also like, you know, kind of in a restrictive phase, so I would do like Italian maybe, or balsamic vinaigrette, and I would put, you know, like crab meat or something on it, like really high fat stuff. And I definitely did not do it the classical correct way. Well, I guess I did, but I didn't really know of the classical like correct way of emphasis on fruits and vegetables. I just thought it was like eat tons of meat, eat tons of nuts, like, and I wasn't really all about eating tons of meat because I'm just like super lazy when it comes to buying meat and cooking meat. So I pretty much just did paleo starvation for 30 days and lost like 15 pounds. So, I mean, a lot of it was water weight, obviously, because you're depleting carbs and probably sodium as well. So I lost a good bit of weight there. And I mean, you know, half of it came back like pretty quickly because I resumed eating whatever I was doing at that time, probably some low calorie thing anyways. But, you know, you have to resume eating at some point just to to think and function. Like by day 30, I was just counting down the hours. I actually think I did go to like 31 days just to like one up my coworker for the respect factor. But I mean, 2 weeks in, it was miserable. 1 week in, it was miserable. 3 weeks in, it was even more miserable. I mean, it was just like starvation. But it's, then again, I don't think it's because of paleo being paleo. I think it's because I did it like actually the wrong way. So unfortunately, I don't have an accurate assessment of the paleo diet. And, you know, afterwards, of course, I was like just telling people, they would ask me how it was and stuff, and I'd be like, it's awful, don't ever do it. But since then, I've learned a little bit more about it, and I see a lot of similarities between it and, you know, a vegan. In both of them in their classical forms, veganism and paleo in their classical forms, I think both have the correct mentality. Eating whole foods, even, you know, if it's whole meats or whatever, like wild meats, like from nature in their most unprocessed form is the key to both of them. And I think both of them as a lifestyle is totally, you know, doable. I mean, I'm really at a place where I feel better not eating meat for digestive purposes. It's not really about the animals right now, but I think that's maybe a benefit, a couple benefits. I'll just talk about a couple benefits I see from veganism over paleo is you don't have like rotting meat like just sitting in your stomach. It's not as expensive. Veganism is not as expensive as if you're going like full-blown like correct paleo, which I would only encourage if you are thinking of going paleo. Please do not do like the cheap paleo, like processed stuff. Do it like in its classical form if you're going to do it and if you're going to make an assessment of it. Otherwise, don't do it. If you're just going to buy like cheap meat and stuff, no way. I mean, processed meat to me is like one of the grossest things from a health mentality. Like, I don't think it's gross. Like, I don't think food's gross. But if you think about it, like, what's in it, I think it's one of the worst. So don't do it unless you're going to do it the whole way. But from a health perspective, if you're going vegan, you don't have any of those risks like that you get from eating meat, like any of the diseases, any possibility of hormones, any of those, you know, contaminations in processing plants, unless you're like, you know, braising and slaughtering a cow yourself, and then you know. But then again, that's really fucking expensive. So veganism is going to be your cheaper option. And if you're lazy like me and you don't want to have to like cook things, not that I'm a raw vegan, but it's much easier to cook up some vegetables than to like marinate, cut up, like fillet, like, and store even, and keep on hand like fresh meats. So I mean, vegetables, like I eat a lot of like rice and potatoes, and that stuff is cheap in bulk. It stores like really, you know, forever, easily. I don't buy organic stuff, and I'm not promoting like organic. Even if you go on paleo, you don't have to do like organic vegetables and everything. I'm just promoting the whole foods form of it. So like organic to me is just, not that I don't have the money to buy organic, I just don't want to use money on organic. I'd rather buy twice as much non-organic produce than the organic version. Just, I mean, to me, that's the, you know, they're still all coming from, you know, like farmers and whatever. So vegetables are healthy, organic or not, they're healthy. So those are just my thoughts on, you know, the paleo diet and my experience, vegan versus paleo, and just some health things that will impact you. But I think they're more like long lost sisters than they are, you know, arch rivals. And I don't think that the vegan and paleo communities should hate each other so much, or should bash each other so much. I think that they should really just form an alliance, bond together, agree to disagree on the meat part, and just promote this healthy lifestyle, like classical forms of veganism and paleo, promote the shit out of it. And I mean, we could really, it would be a huge movement, I think, and could possibly revolutionize America. I mean, we saw the traction that paleo got. I think veganism's picking up traction in America. So imagine combining the two, and then in the next 5-10 years, I mean, we could have, America could no longer be, you know, the sad diet, standard American diet. It could be like a happy paleo or vegan diet. I don't know. What do you guys think?